Is Ohio State the most interesting watch in the country? Are they headed to the Final Four? We've got someone here who has particular insight into just that question. Locked on Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi, everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. I'm Howard Megdal, founder and editor of The Next, where you can get all your women's basketball coverage, over 100 reported pieces every single day at thenexthoops.com. And I want to thank you for listening to our podcast, the Locked On Women's Basketball Podcast, 6 days a week, covering the sport that you love. It is Monday through Friday on all topics, Saturday on the WNBA draft. Subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we pay particular attention to Kevin McGuff's program at Ohio State, the Ohio State University, which is a very, very interesting team. I'm going to get into a bit of the stats nerdom that come along with it, which I love to do. Coach, first of all, thank you for being here with us. And second of all, just as you come through a week like this, where it is just the absolute meat grinder of the Big Ten, how do you kind of stay sane as you're trying to navigate handling, scouting of a pair of top 10 teams in your week?
Well, Howard, I'm not sure I do stay sane. Let's start there. But no, the Big Ten, this is as good as it's ever been. The teams are great. There's a lot of talent. The coaching's as good as any league in the country. And, one of the interesting thing too is and I don't have the stats behind this, but it seems like attendance is up everywhere. The interest in our league and the teams in our league is at an all-time high. So it's tough. I mean, and, we've had a great run. We were undefeated up until last night. And, for us now, we got to handle losing. We've handled winning fine. Our kids have showed up. They've been focused and all that. We weren't at our best last night, but give Iowa credit. They were terrific. They were better than we were last night. And so now we got to handle a loss, and we got to make sure we show up today and we practice the right way and we get ready for a great Indiana team.
So I want to take you back if I can. And so our listeners ought to know, Coach, you have been at the epicenter of success in this sport for several decades now. We can talk about your time at Xavier, of course. We can talk about, your time at UW, all of these things that come into play. But I'm going to go back even further. I'm going to go back to the Notre Dame team you were on staff for with Muffet McGraw, of course. And that team was undefeated until February 17th, 2001. And then there's a 54-53 defeat at Rutgers. And I'm just wondering how much, and maybe I'm overstating it, but how much you think that and figuring out how to navigate a loss like that helped you guys get the rest of the way and ultimately capture that championship?
That's a great point, Howard, and I didn't even think about it like that. But that is something I can certainly draw on. That was a magical year for me, personally and professionally. When we, had that year at Notre Dame where we won a national championship, and I do remember that loss at the rack. That was rough. So that's cool. Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, like that team at Notre Dame, we handled that loss, and it kind of was a wake up call for us, and to kind of get back to being who we were capable of being and practicing the right way and preparing the right way. And I think that's the same thing for this team. And we're in a little different situation in that, one of our best players, Jacy Sheldon, will be coming back at some point very soon, I think. And so us infusing her back into the lineup, I think will give us a big boost, and I think will give the team a lot of confidence. So, I think us getting back to kind of being who we're capable of being and infusing her back in, hopefully that gives us, the boost that we need to be the team we're capable of being here down the stretch.
The spoiler alert for those of you who don't remember is, of course, that Notre Dame team went on to beat Connecticut in the national semifinals beat Purdue in the NCAA championship game. A big day for you guys in St. Louis, Missouri. And so before we get into some of the details of this team, because Jacy Sheldon is an incredibly exciting player. There's so much to this roster up and down. And frankly, the way you play, which I guess you could say the same thing up and down, right? In terms of JC specifically, I know that is such a challenging thing in multiple ways, right? Number one, you got a young woman whose future you have in your hands and you're figuring out how to navigate making sure that she is healthy. You also, and you know this, you've produced, pros aplenty, that the WNBA is looking closely at, like, what is her injury history? How is she coming back? People coming at the games. I know, I talk to people in front offices, they love her. They love her as a two-way player. And we were seeing it early on. She had 33 steals in her first 5 games. And we'll get into the way in which you guys play that way that allows that to happen. But how are you balancing those things? What goes into it as you're trying to figure it out? All right, when do we bring her back? What is the line that we're drawing there? Because you have the present and the future to consider at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And well, one, she's an incredible kid. I mean, I love coaching her, and she's been so great in our program. And I think the thing with JC that's a little bit unique is that my thought on this with her specifically is that we bring her back when she's ready to go 100%, because she's not the type of kid who does real well with, hey, we're going to play a couple minutes. We're going to load management and all that stuff. If when I take her out of the game and she's completely healthy, it's like a fight. Like, she's out for 10 seconds. She's like, Coach, why am I not back in? She wants to play, and she's just got a motor that doesn't stop. So, we're going to bring her back when she's ready to go. And, I'll let the doctors and the trainers, really be at the forefront of that, and they'll tell me when we can go. But when it's time to go, we're going to go. And because, like I said, she doesn't do well with sitting on the bench when she's able to play. She wants to be in the game, and so she's a great kid. I can't wait to get her back and let her get out there and play and impact our team like she was before she got hurt. But I think we're close, but obviously we're trying to be very prudent and just to make sure that she's 100% and that she can be at her best down the stretch.
I mean, it helps, of course, that there is less urgency in the sense that there's so much talent up and down this roster, obviously. And you've seen some other players take steps forward. But, I mentioned the steals thing. And, one of the most interesting things to me about the way you guys play is, number one, the way you run. The fact that you are coming into last night, you were 9th in the country in transition points per possession, but you had more transition opportunities, according to Synergy, than any of the 8 ahead of you. 23.6% of your offense was coming out of transition. It's obviously something we're familiar with seeing out of your teams, but it's almost just taken to another level. And I guess I wonder, and we'll get to the defense in a moment, do you think that running teams ragged like that at the offensive end helps you create those defensive opportunities to turn people over?
Yeah, no, we've kind of tried to obviously merge our offense and our defense to create an overall system that relies on certainly pace on offense and then full court pressure on defense. And, I like the way we play. And I think, when we're healthy and at 100%, I think we can be a difficult team to play against. And so, and, we emphasize conditioning. We emphasize, it's kind of simple, but I'm really on them that we run, run. And I thought that was, not to get off topic, but last night in that first half, we weren't running on offense and we weren't putting pressure on Iowa to get back and stop us. And that was a problem for us. And so we kind of got it together a little bit at halftime, but when we're not running and putting pressure on the defense to really get back and stop us, that's a problem for me.
There's this next level, this kind of a motor that you reach. I've seen, I saw you do it in the Minnesota game as well, where, the Gophers had a lead in the third and then you guys decided to step on the afterburners. You're right. It did seem to come a little later against Iowa than it typically has. I think you were at 0 fast break points midway through the third, which is shocking given the way, I mean, and just for our listeners to understand, this is a team that put up 96 on Louisville. This is a team that, went out and put up 83 against Minnesota, 99 at McNeese State earlier this year, a couple of 100 plus, Wright State and North Alabama. So the points go in a hurry. Let's talk about the other side of that. I want to get into the defense because you being your complete team is what makes you, to my mind, such a championship contender. I'm going to take a moment, though, and talk to you about our brand new sponsor, which is FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about the new sports betting partner for Locked On. It's the number one sports book in America. It's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have a lot of great features that make betting fun and easy. New customers join to get started today with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You just go and sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. It has all your favorite bets from money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a bigger chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So fans, don't miss out. Use your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, defensively, you guys last year were about as good, a little bit better this year, but about as good offensively. Defensively, you go by points per 100 possessions. I think you were 128th in the country. Now you're top 25. That difference, to me, is powered by the way in which you're able to turn people over. And I just want for our listeners to frame our discussion, talk about this, because these numbers are amazing. Steal percentage, for me, is one of the best ways of determining, all right, you go beyond, just deflections and what you're seeing and the eye test on defense. And you say, all right, how many times are people just coming up with the ball? And, Jacy had the 8.2, which is, comical how good it is over her 5 games. But you guys have Madison Green at 4.4, Ebony Walker at 3.7, Cody McMahon at 3.5, Taylor Theory at 3.4. It just goes on and on. Even, Taylor Mitchell is 10th on your roster, and she's at 2.1. Like, everybody is contributing to this. And so take me through, if you could, just bigger picture, how you viewed the changes coming into the season for your defense, and also just how, like, when the rubber hits the road, how are you making that happen?
Well, we obviously have committed to, 94 feet of pressure, and we like to press, and we like to really get after people and use our depth in that way. I think that we've gotten a little bit better this year in marrying the full court with the half court, and just to make an overall, just more comprehensive, better defensive system. And so I still think we have some room to grow there, and that's going to be a big point of emphasis down the stretch. And we need to finish off possessions with our rebounding to be better. But I think just the marrying the full court and the half court has been the biggest jump this year for us.
It's really interesting, and the numbers bear this out. Again, because of the way you guys play, you don't, and it's fascinating to me, right? Some teams are trying to bridge the gap between how often you're in transition and how often the opposition is, and you're trying to limit how much they run. It doesn't seem like that is a major point of emphasis. And by the way, it doesn't need to be, because you guys are elite at both. So if you look at your numbers from an overall half court perspective, and we'll go back to synergy, 0.69 points per possession. So you're upper tier in nationally on the half court defense. What are you also? You are 0.798 in transition defense, which is just a crazy low number efficiency wise. When teams are getting out and running, they're just not finishing against you guys. How are you doing that specifically? What is it that allows your transition defense to be so effective?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think our transition defense is going to get a lot better. But anything we give up in transition defense really irks me. So that's a pet peeve of mine. But one of the things I think we are doing a little bit better job this year, whether it's versus like people at the end of the press or in transition defense, I think our post players are having a better presence around the basket, not fouling, but at least making people shoot over them and take tough shots.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're getting back into play and rebounding. So I think our at the end of our transition defense or at the end of our press, our post players are doing a really good job just not giving up easy baskets.
It's interesting. Listen, far be it for me to tell you that you're not correct about your team, but it is certainly in terms of the national picture, you guys are doing it as well as anybody in the country. If you're telling me there's another gear, I think for the nation to deal with the fact that a 19-1 team is about to get a superstar player back and has another gear in transition defense, that seems a little bit frightening to everyone. I would imagine no one wants to hear that.
I'm hoping Jacy comes back. We're in transition a little bit less because she's getting the steals that she was getting, and we're making layups. So I hope that's
right.
what happens.
Understood. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And certainly her efficiency at that end will play a part in that. Something else that will for sure, of course, is the continued play of Rebeka Mikulasikova. And I just want to talk about her because I just feel like she, Taylor is obviously, somebody who we've seen has done so many great things. Jacy, somebody talked about a lot. Rebeka, all she's done is become a 6'4" stretch post who's making 60% of her twos and 38.2% of her threes on 4.5 attempts. Like, how did she transform in this way? And has she exceeded what you even expected what she could be for you so far this season?
Yeah, she's a very unique player, and she's a really important player for us. When you talk about the offensive end, she allows us to really create great spacing, and she stretches the floor. She also draws the other team's post player and sometimes rim protector away from the basket, which has been really good for us. And when we recruited her, I thought she had great potential, and it honestly. It evolved in an interesting way, and we had a lot of post players when she first got here. We had a couple transfer out, and I think that was probably good for us for her development in terms of now she had a much bigger role, and she's really stepped up and done a great job. But she's a really sweet kid, and she loves her teammates, and just been a great kid in our program. But her ability to play away from the basket has been really, really important for us.
And so that's a sacrifice that you guys make. You are essentially looking on the defensive end to be doing it through turning people over rather than being necessarily crashing the boards or, your sort of traditional rim protecting. It's a trade-off that's clearly working for you. Is that the system that all things being equal you prefer, or is this just what you are running as a consequence of the specific skill sets you have of the players here right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A little bit of both. I like how we're playing. I really do. And my preference would be to continue to recruit to it. We're always going to play an up-tempo system on offense. I like the pressing. Now, the way we specifically play in the half court on offense might have something to do with how we recruit. If we continue to find post players that can play in the perimeter, that's my preference. I like the spacing. I like the fact that we can draw the rim protectors away from the basket. It helps our guards when they get to the rim, no one there contesting shots. And I think I also like this too. And Howard, I know you cover the WNBA extensively. I think it's a great system for preparing people for the next level. You see a lot of WNBA teams doing a lot more in terms of their spacing. And so I think our kids have an advantage by playing in this system.
No question about it, and I think you see it again and again, and will continue to. I do want to talk about that before we go, and so just real briefly, thank you to our listeners for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment across every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. And somebody who covered or who watched the NBA a lot, and we met years ago about just this person. And that was when I was doing a story about a young guard in your program named Kelsey Mitchell. She's gone on to, of course, great things, not only for you, but now in the WNBA. Just take me through what it was like to have her back and be able to see her in person and just what that experience was like having Kelsey returning to the program this week.
It was great. She's such a great kid. One of the hardest workers that I've ever been around. I mean, she just her success is not by accident. She's just such a hard worker. She's a great kid, incredibly humble. I told her yesterday, she's the second all-time leading scorer in NCAA history. And I told her yesterday in front of the team, if we were playing and running offense like we are now, when I had her, she'd be number one. And no offense to Kelsey Plum, because I love Kelsey Plum, and I recruited her to Washington before I left. But like we're way more efficient offensively the way we run it than when she was here. But she's a great kid. I really, really, really enjoyed having her back. She was phenomenal with our players. She gave every player on our team her phone number and said, "Hey, any of you guys ever need anything, reach out to me. I want to be there for you. I want to support you. I want to support the program." So I couldn't have been happier having her back, and it was really just a thrill.
She's becoming a leader. Lynn Dunn's talking about this too, with the Fever, that this is where she is finding that next step. But you stole my thunder, which was to say that you are the master of recruiting high-scoring Kelseys.
Hey, it is funny. I recruited both of them. They're both left-handed. They're both named Kelsey, and boy, can they both score the ball.
They sure can. Well, so can your team now. So to everyone, if you are not watching Ohio State game in and game out, make sure you are tuning in. That's going to be an epic one against Indiana coming up later this week. I will certainly be tuning in on that. Thank you to our listeners for listening to us every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Kevin McGuff, always great catching up with you, and all the best to you the rest of the year. Be seeing you down the road, I'm sure.
Thank you, Howard. I really appreciate you having me on today, buddy.
My pleasure. To our listeners, tune in tomorrow. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing you a wonderful day.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.